Very good evening and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news, and we've got some interesting news coming out in the last 40 minutes or so, talking about a new bid for Rasmus Hojlund, talking about Erik Ten Hag desperate to sell Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay and a couple of others, and also we've got up... Oh, excuse me. I had a big pint of beer there. I didn't really. We've also got Fabrizio Romano talking about the goalkeeper situation, but also a complete and utter contradiction of reports this afternoon in relation to Onana and Justin Bijlow, the Feyenoord keeper. The Telegraph in the Netherlands basically saying that we're going for the Feyenoord keeper because he's cheaper than Onana, but then Romano and other people saying we're very still much locked in on the deal for Onana. So we'll fly into all that, and it's the Sunday night show, which is the original show on the United Stand. So I hope you're doing well. I am wearing a shirt, Omka, because I've just been doing the Talk Sport show, talking about transfers on there. So I'm all ready to go. Bama has just been a member for 10 months as well. Okay, so let's just hit this straight away. I didn't expect to be talking about Rasmus Hojlund tonight, even though I do know a lot of what's going on there, hotter than the sun, etc., etc. However, this has come out in the last hour. It's coming in from the Sun. But what have I told you? I try not to educate. I try to just communicate. And according to El Nacional in Spain, United are in for Chelmini, Mark, says Andy. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Mark, thanks a lot for your work, says Steve. Thank you very much. So the Sun has a bad reputation in the UK, has a terrible reputation in Liverpool for reasons that are totally justified. And it's, the Sun is somewhat laughed at in the UK in relation to credibility and reliability. I think that's a fair stereotype of what people think about the Sun. However, what I would say, and I've always said this to you, and he was right about Lukaku back when that happened. He was right about Carrick being the captain a few years ago as well. Neil Custis has been a Manchester United journalist for more years than a lot of you have supported Manchester United. He has been a Manchester United correspondent for a long time. The press conferences, if you speak to Adam or Ryan when they do them, they'll say that Neil Custis just has this aura of, he's been there for years and years and years and, is somewhat respected within that arena, whether you like it or not. So that's the background to Neil Custis, whether people like the Sun, whether they like him or whatever. He has been a United correspondent for years. And if you've been a correspondent for Man United for years, you do build relationships. And I think when he says Man United, well, there's a few things that he said in his article tonight. I think you have to take it on board. And I think people who don't take those things on board are people who are just very bitter. They probably plot revenge and stuff like that. And that's just not the way to be. If you don't like something, you don't like it. You don't have to keep obsessing about it, and you don't have to pretend because you don't like it that it's not genuine. I've always said that when Neil Custis puts stuff out there, it's worth listening to, it's worth reading, and it's worth at least considering. So he's saying that Man United are preparing a second bid of £40 million to land Rasmus Hojlund. Well, this interests me because I'm not aware of this, and yet I do know a lot about the Rasmus Hojlund interest, and I have been saying to you for a long time, Rasmus Hojlund to United, hotter than the sun. And when it happens, you can all say, Goldbridge, you were way ahead of the game, and I'll go, yes, but let's not make it all about me. But no, I expect Man United to sign Rasmus Hojlund, and I have done for a long time. I'm not aware of this, so this excites me because I'm not aware of this. I'm not aware of these bids. I'm not aware of these bids. I don't know why I'm talking like that. Because it's Atalanta, maybe. But there was an Italian report on Friday that said about Man United had a €35 million bid rejected and would go in with a €45 million bid. So that sort of starts feeding back into this. So, and I think that was last night, wasn't it? So I think with this bid, Sunday and Friday night shows are the greatest, as Kareem. Thank you very much. I personally find this quite exciting because I'm not aware of this. My understanding has always been that I can speak proper Italian if you want it, by the way, because my real name is Italian. But that was a rubbish Italian accent. I could do it properly with the real words, but you'd all just disappear. Not because my Italian's so good that you would just disintegrate. No, just because you'd just switch off because you'd be going, what the bloody hell is he talking about? Bellissimo. But you know what? I think that this does excite me because my personal belief is that United, to get Rasmus Hojlund, it will be based on add-ons anyway, and therefore I've always said I think somewhere between 40 and 50 up front and 20 in add-ons, because I think with a striker it's a really good way to justify add-ons with a striker, because you just say, if he's after he scores, we did it with Martial from Monaco, you just say things like, if he scores 50 goals, we'll give you another 10 million. Or when he scores 50 goals, we'll give you another 10 million. And you know, for Atalanta, that's very good as well, because Atalanta probably come in and say, we want 60. And United go, we'll give you 40 plus 20. Because if he scores 50 goals, you'll get another 10. And if he scores 100 goals, you'll get another 10. You're basically getting the 60, but he's got to prove that he is the striker that you're saying he is. So Fidelis says 40 million should be enough because he's not yet proven. If rejected, we move away from Hojlund. Look, all I can say is that Rasmus Hojlund really wants to come to United, and Erik Ten Hag really wants him to come to United. Hugo wants me to speak Italian. Welcome to the Members Club, Howie. So I'm excited by this because I'm not going to pay any attention to the fee. I think the fee, as we've seen with Chelsea and Mount, and currently with Onana, you can get lost in the fee. But I think what we can all start to establish now is that you can't doubt me when I said that we're in for Rasmus Hojlund a few weeks ago and it was hotter than the sun. I think some people were like, oh yeah, you're just making it up. And I'm like, well, I'm not making it up. I know where it came from. It's bloody brilliant, you know, and it's not a source I've used before because it's that close to the actual, you know what, and you know, it's fantastic that it's bearing fruit, that now it's starting to hit the mainstream how interested we are in Rasmus Hojlund. We've still got to get the deal over the line. There are still concerns about, you know, the financials around Man United in general, but I think this is really interesting, and hopefully, for me, I think the goalkeeper situation will take care of itself, but the striker situation needs to be taken care of. We need to go on tour. I'm not talking about the tour. I mean, you know, it'd be great for the American fans and everyone who's going to watch the games to see Rasmus Hojlund, but the tour is pre-season, and it'll be great for pre-season to have a striker. That has to happen. Imagine doing your budget on Mount and Hojlund. Teams like Villa are going to be taking over as next season, says Glazers out. And looking great today in the blue button-up shirt. I hope you have a great night, says Justin. Thank you very much, Justin. So, yeah, this is coming in from Neil Custis, that we are to put in a second bid of £40 million for Rasmus Hojlund. I mean, I don't actually think we've put in a bid, by the way. I don't think we've put in an official bid. I think what's happened is we are... Remember I don't want to take you back down memory lane because it wasn't great memories. But remember the Jadon Sancho deal? We never really put bids in. And United don't like to put a bid in until they think it's going to get accepted traditionally. So I suspect that there's been a bit of back and forth in negotiations where United have said, we'll give you 30, and Atalanta have said 50, and we've gone 40 or something like that. But I don't think we've officially put the bid in yet. But look, it's looking very encouraging around Rasmus Hojlund, and I'll be very encouraged by this signing. I get the comeback. I get the other side of the coin here. You are buying a very young striker with potential, who's not the finished article, who is coming into a league that he's never played in before, playing in a club and Champions League football when he's hardly played any football for Atalanta in Serie A. I get all of those things. It's a very, very, very steep curve. But if you know anything about Rasmus Hojlund, he's already on a steep curve. Like, he's already playing for the Danish side, and next season he would be first choice for Atalanta. And that curve's about to go like that. And if you snooze, you lose. It's not a case of next season he's going to grow gradually. He's a bit like Evan Ferguson. Next season, Evan Ferguson's going to go like that. And so will Rasmus Hojlund. And you either jump on it now, or you wait a year, and then suddenly his price goes up massively and there's a lot more interest from a lot more clubs. United, I dispute and argue with the people who are saying Rasmus Hojlund's not good enough, because this is exactly the sort of deal that people have been moaning about for years that we don't do. We don't jump on these deals soon enough. We wait. We see the likes of Kante go to Leicester and we go, why didn't we do that deal? You know, we see Haaland go from Salzburg to Dortmund and we go, why didn't we do that deal? And we've missed out on a lot of these deals in the past. And Rasmus Hojlund, you can't moan about it, because these are the sort of deals that fans moan about that we don't do. He's not the finished article. He is the potential. And we don't do enough of the potential deals. And I for one, would be over the moon if we do it. The bottom line is what we should be doing. And if we did have proper ownership, what we would do is you would sign Harry Kane and Rasmus Hojlund. Or you would sign Victor Osimhen and Evan Ferguson. You would have a young striker and an experienced striker, because you do need two. You know, Harry Kane doesn't need to play 90 minutes 3 times a week. He can have a rest in the week, and if he's playing shit, he can come off after 70 minutes, and then you bring Hojlund on. That's what we need to do. But obviously we haven't got the money to do that. Do you reckon all this financial fair play chat is strategy from Murta and Arnold? It's just a strategy to help with the clubs overcharging us? No, Jared, I just think we're crap at transfers. Tony has gifted 5 memberships. You're a legend, Tony. And once we get Hojlund in, who do you think we turn our attention to? Chouamini seems to be all over my feed lately, says Ivan. I would love to be wrong about this, but you can file Chouamini under the same bullshit that you can file Caicedo. Even Fabrizio has come out today and said United were never in for Caicedo, it was always Mount. You can do what you like with this information. You can forget it, you can use it, you can bury it, you can ignore it, you can acknowledge it. But I said, and many of you agreed with me last week, when we were negotiating the Mason Mount deal, good journalists who'd clearly been briefed by somebody were saying Man United are in official talks with Brighton for Caicedo. And I said, bullshit. We are not in official talks with Brighton for Caicedo. We can't afford Caicedo because he's 70 million and we're arguing about 55 with Chelsea. We are not in for Caicedo. And also, we are doing that to try and make Chelsea scared so that they'll sell us Mount. Lo and behold, Fabrizio comes out and says they weren't in for Caicedo. So, you know, you've got to be very, very careful when last week you've got credible journalists saying that we're in for Caicedo and then we weren't. So I don't think we're in for Chouamini at all. Mark, been here for 23 months. Would you take Santi Jimenez, says Ruben? I mean, look, at this moment in time, I'd take quite a few players because I think we need a few players. The financial fair play chat is bullshit for people being good at their jobs. I could walk and take a quarter of the salary and give them twice the work, says Z3 Music Official. Thank you very much for that. So we're working through this article that's come out from Neil Custis saying that a bid's going to go in for Rasmus Hojlund, which is obviously very, very exciting. But he's also had a few other bits to say. And what he's had to say, and we're going to talk about the goalkeeper situation because that's very, very confusing. But the next bit that was quite interesting is, and it's from the same article about Rasmus Hojlund, Manchester, and again, this excites me because, as I say, Neil Custis is in the Sun, but he's also a Manchester United journalist that's been close to Manchester United for probably over 2 decades, maybe even longer. He has got good connections, he has got good sources, and he has got things right, and he has had exclusives. So when he says that we're going to bid for Rasmus Hojlund, I mean, that to me sounds very, very encouraging in relation to what I know about that deal is that we want him. So this could be moving closer and closer to an actual deal. And then you couple it with this is great. Manchester United are desperate to sell Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay and Anthony Martial. Felix Loan, says Christopher. I mean, you must be talking about Zhao. Just wanted to commend your work ethic, Mark. I was watching you on TalkSport and now you're an hour-long show on here. We appreciate you. Thanks, Mo. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I think that this is really encouraging because they're not M&M, they're M&M and M. They're all 3 M's, Martial, McTominay and Maguire. I'm Ricky. And they are... I was talking about this morning, and these 3 players, I said this morning, they symbolise whether we have a good window or a bad window, because for their own separate reasons, they all need to go. And there are different reasons with all 3, and I'm not going to get into that, but they all do need to go. So when you hear that, you know, effectively Ten Hag wants to sell all 3 of them, I think this is fantastic. And it's another hint of what Ten Hag can do. We've acknowledged and commented on his ruthlessness in relation to the goalkeeper situation, but this sort of ruthlessness is completely justified. Harry Maguire needs to go. I mean, he just needs to go. Like, forget what Ten Hag wants to do. How he doesn't realise he needs to go is incredible. If he doesn't, I don't know. You are 5th choice centre-back, to be honest. Varane and Martinez, Lindelof, Luke Shaw, and then you. You're 5th choice centre-back. You are the captain of the club and your 5th choice centre-back. You play for England, but you can't play for Man United. You've played more minutes for England last season than you have for Manchester United. You need to go and play football, mate. You've got to go. and there will be clubs that buy you. Scott McTominay, people still think you're 18, you're 26, you're 27 next, you're in a Scottish international, you need to be playing first football, you never will be United unless we have an injury crisis. And Anthony Martial, I mean, I like Martial. Just because a player needs to be sold doesn't mean you don't like them. Can't stay fit, been here a long time, just cannot find the consistency, it's time to go. So all three of them need to go. Now, the question will be, how many of them can be sold? But it's encouraging that Ten Hag clearly wants to get rid of them and has that ruthless streak in him. The challenge is going to be, I mean, McTominay's the easiest to sell of the lot because he's a youth player, he's homegrown, he won't be on stupid wages, and there is interest in him. McTominay's the easiest of the lot. The other two, Maguire's on 200k a week, Martial's not far off that, and that wage has to be factored into the sale. But it can be done. Ian says, hopefully Manchester United buy Hojlund and we get deals done early instead of last-minute buys, costing us more. Fingers crossed. Thanks, Ian. Do you think we will sign a defensive midfielder player this summer? Because Casemiro needs to be rested this season, says Darren. Well, I think if we can move McTominay on, and Fred will go, then we will buy another midfielder. But it's all going to come down to that. Kevin, welcome to Members Club. Mark, if we land Rasmus, what would your preference be next? Another CDM or another centre-forward? Well, we need both, Philip, but I mean, if you want my preference, it's always been striker, holding midfielder, centre-back, second midfielder. So Mount was my fourth priority. So we've got, I need another midfielder, I need a striker, I need a centre-back. And then I'd want another striker, and then I want a goalkeeper. But, you know, Ten Hag's priorities are going to be different to mine. I guess nothing's going to be signed off or moved until Wednesday at the earliest because the greedy Glazers being on another holiday for Independence Day, says Glenny Boy. Glenny Boy. Thank you very much, Glenny Boy. But interestingly, just again, from the same article from Neil Custis, he had this to say in relation to Fred. Erik Ten Hag is hopeful Man United can offload Fred to Fulham for 15 million. So, look, I think that it's very easy at the moment from what's out there to cut through the bullshit and say, as we've always predicted, that United's transfer fund is 120 million. They've spent 55 of it on Mason Mount, which leaves them with 65, and they're trying to buy Hojlund and Onana. It's not enough. 65 will not get you Onana and Hojlund. I think to get Hojlund and Onana, you're probably going to need about 80. So 65 plus 15 for Fred gives you 80. So Fred out is probably going to help us to get Onana and Hojlund. You then sell Henderson. That gives you a little bit more to cover any extras on those. So I think if Fred and Henderson go out, you can bring Hojlund and Onana in. But you're back to square nothing again. That's why you need to sell McTominay and Maguire if you want to buy any other players. It's actually scary when you look at striking options on paper, says Philip. Oh, mate, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. You've got Rashford, and he's a left winger. That's what we've got up front next season. And you know what's even more scary? You've got Rasmus. No, we haven't got Rasmus yet. You've got Marcus Rashford as our only striker next season because you can't trust Martial to be fit. But there's no young player. There's no young player that we can throw in. Charlie McNeil and Joe Hugel have not been training with the first team. Ten Hag has not promoted them to the bench. So there is no youth player who is ready to play on the bench as a striker. And all we've got is Marcus Rashford, whose best position is off the left if Martial gets injured. It's terrifying. Cavani's not been replaced. Ronaldo's not been replaced. And Martial needs replacing. So we're three strikers down, really, going into a season where we all know, like any other season, goals win games. So, look, I hope there's a lot of truth in that article from Neil Custis. I hope Rasmus Hojlund is on his way. I hope a bid's on his way. I know he's on his way, but I hope that bid's on its way. I hope that we can sell Maguire, Martial and McTominay and Fred and Henderson, because that will bring in a nice 150 million, which will be very, very, very welcome. In relation to the second midfielder that we need to sign, the problem we've got with that is that Caicedo is going to Chelsea, Rice is going to Arsenal, Lavia may well be going to Liverpool. So the three midfielders that we could really do with are all going to go to rivals. And again, this just comes down to, it doesn't come down to the fact that Ten Hag didn't want those players. It comes down to the fact that we weren't in a position to buy them because of the ownership model. Like, that second midfielder, Ten Hag wants one. This is why he was going for Rabiot, by the way. Rabiot was the cheap option. That's why he wanted him. He's now not got Rabiot, and all his other options are being lined up by our rivals. So who that second midfielder is going to be, I don't know, but we definitely do need one. Hi, Mark. Do you think we will go for Lavia, or will we leave our midfield for the bin? Also, love the show. Keep it up, says Reese. Well, we've got a sell to buy in relation to the second midfielder, Reese. Mark, did you hear Mbappe linked to Arsenal next year? Arteta revolution continues. Yeah, there's absolutely... Zane, please do clip me up. There is absolutely no chance. There's more chance of Zane playing up front for Arsenal next season than there is of Mbappe ever signing for Arsenal. He's not going to sign for Arsenal. Never going to sign for Arsenal. If Mbappe is going to sign for any Premier League club, it will be Manchester United when Qatar take over. But he's going to go to Real Madrid. Mbappe is going to Real Madrid. Why not try and go for Gravenberch, says Alvaro. Well, you know what? You've just dropped the most relevant point of the show. The transfer window doesn't stop with Lavia, Rice and Caicedo. There are other holding midfield options out there, and Gravenberch, for me, could be a real diamond in the rough. The problem with it is people will go, oh, not another Eredivisie ex-Ajax Ten Hag player, but he's a player a year ago we would have loved to be signing from Ajax. I mean, he was arguably, to be honest with you, a year ago, well, a bit longer than a year ago, but you know what I mean. From that Ten Hag Ajax side, if you were asking me who I would sign, it probably would be Anthony number one, because I do like Anthony, but I probably would have said Gravenberch too. So, and I'm over the moon with Martinez, and I think Timber's great, and I think, Alvarez is a good player, and I really do like Anthony, but Gravenberch would probably have been the player that I would have said with Anthony that I'd say go and get him. So you put that player with Ten Hag, I think Gravenberch looks really, really interesting. But you know what else is interesting though? United haven't, and this is amazing. United are keeping an open mind about Sabitzer. I mean, why? What does Sabitzer bring to that team now you've brought Mason Mount? Sabitzer is better going forward. He's another number 8 with more attacking intent. Sabitzer cannot do the role that Casemiro does. You've got to go for somebody with a bit more defensive capabilities. Lil says, have you seen reports about Taremi for Porto? Apparently available for 20 million. He's been prolific for a couple of seasons, but he's 30. Lil, I don't want to be disrespectful to Taremi, but if we sign Taremi, we're screwed. Not because he's a bad player, but because that's an absolute declaration that we've got absolutely no money. Like, if we are desperate for a striker, if we're buying a £20 million striker, then we are screwed. Villa are more dangerous than we are in the transfer market. In fact, you could probably argue Everton are. We can't be signing a player like that for a position that is the priority. We can afford a new build, Henderson, so Onana only costs 12 million. McFred out gives us 40 to 50. Maguire, Tellez, Williams, Woodbort as Kim and Donny van der Beek plus 25, says Danny, thank you. Alvaro says, why not try and go for Gravenberch? Good point. Mark, did you hear Mbappe linked to Arsenal? We've done that one. Danny says, United board seem to start plans when the window opens. Other clubs buy before or early. Glazers out, yes, but Inet board needs to go with new owners to improve it, says Danny. And I'm hearing Ramos is available for 60 million. This is obviously the Benfica striker, says Philip. If there's a chance of signing Tchouaméni, it's this season. Supposedly, Real aren't impressed with him from last year. Well, you know what, Philip? I mean, you've almost let me just okay. Let's do it this way. 2 players have been mentioned. Either or. Who would you sign out of these 2 players? So you got Tchouaméni, which I've probably just spelt completely wrong. And you got Gravenberch. Who would you sign out of those 2? If you had to choose either of those players, who would you choose? Because what worries me is Tchouaméni is a good player based on what we knew a year ago. If Real Madrid are not impressed with him, is that not a red flag to not go and get him? Because I just think sometimes we follow the name and the potential and the reputation, but why are Real Madrid moving him on? If Real Madrid are moving him on, should we not be concerned about that? So look, we're not in for Chummy. I'll go Gravenberch. I'd go Gravenberch. And look, you could argue that they're both in the same situation. They both are very, very talented midfielders who've gone to two big clubs respectively, Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, and not really achieved. But I just think Gravenberch's got huge talent, and I think that Ten Hag can get that out of him. I don't think we've got a cat in house chance of getting Tchouaméni. As much as I would like it, I think it's bollocks. Having said that, we have got good relationships with Real Madrid. Obviously, we bought Casemiro and Varane from them, so you mustn't forget that. Another midfielder, loan to buy, says Christopher. Look, if we could do a loan to buy, I'd love us to do that. But, you know, good point, Mark. However, they sold Hakimi. Where do you rate him? Says Zeus. And, well, we're not in for Hakimi, are we? Gravenberch wasn't that good at Ajax. Talented though, says Thomas. And Gravenberch can't get in the Bayern team, says Gary. And Mark, any news on a change of captaincy, says Edward. I mean, that's actually a very relevant point. We have, you know, I don't think it's high on the agenda. I think the sale of the club is number one, and then buying and selling some players is number two. But the captaincy does need to change. And it's the same as the number 7 shirts, isn't it? But we do need to change the captaincy. You can't... Harry Maguire, well, he can be club captain, can't he? But really, we should just change the captaincy next year. Timber, Rice, Havertz will lead us to the league and maybe Champions League, says Zayn Miasi. And he's an Arsenal fan. And I think Real is getting rid of him since they bought in Bellingham. May no longer need him for the midfield, says Ivan. Good evening, Mark. Will you be doing a show in Edinburgh when United play up here, says Alistair. I don't know what we're doing in relation to the tour at the moment, but we'll let you know when we do. And James says, Mark, you said the other day you can see De Jong at City. I'm telling you now that I have the same feeling, mate. Mate, I don't want to talk about it, James. But I'm starting to get more and more on that. Yeah. That will really hurt Ten Hag as well. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that would really hurt Ten Hag if that happened. You know, his obsessively number one target comes to Manchester but goes to Man City. I mean, I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but, you know, it wouldn't surprise, would it? Let's just give you the latest on the goalkeeping situation, because this is really, really, really difficult to decipher. So, De Telegraaf in the Netherlands is a good outlet, as you'll know from when we got Ten Hag and, you know, the Ajax stuff. So they're saying that Andre Onana's valuation has led Erik Ten Hag to turn his attention to the Feyenoord goalkeeper, Justin Bijlow, who could be available for about a third of the price. They go on to say that Feyenoord won't, as it stands, put a price tag on him. Instead, they're waiting to see what Manchester United will pay. Talks have taken place between Feyenoord and Manchester United for a possible deal for Bijlow, who is open to a move. However, United do have other options. So, again, I mean, you know, it's a good source. But you get lost here in trying to decipher the detail, because the reason he's a third of the cost is because he's not even a third of the player. Like, he's not... These sort of things make me laugh. So if there was any truth, and I don't think there is, but it almost reads that United don't want to go for Onana when they can get Bijlow for a third of the price. And again, it's a bit like the Taremi thing, isn't it? It's just a cost thing. Like, the reason he's a third of the price in this case is because he's a third of the player. Like, the reason Onana costs more is because he's better. You can't buy people because they're cheap. Sometimes, you know, you get what you pay for. So that worries me a little bit. And the second thing, which I also said this morning, so apologies for repeating myself, is, you know, a lot of people will say, well, maybe we're going for Onana and Bijlow. But, and look, maybe we are. But what doesn't make any sense to me about that is why the Feyenoord goalkeeper would want to come and be the reserve goalkeeper at Man United, because he would be the reserve goalkeeper behind Onana and you wouldn't hardly ever play. A reserve goalkeeper is a very particular goalkeeper. You know, I don't want to say they lack ambition, but they know their role. They're there to be hardly ever playing. So it doesn't make sense for me that we go for the Feyenoord goalkeeper to be the reserve goalkeeper to Onana. I don't. It worries me a little bit, these links, because they've been going on for a few days now. And to me, it looks like he might be the cheap option other than Onana, which I think a lot of people who watch him regularly would be really worried about from what we've heard. Timber Right, I've done that from Zane. Madrid will move him on because they have Bellingham and Camavinga. I think it's a loan to buy for Tchouaméni. Could be a great deal, says Andy. Look, I'd take Tchouaméni on a loan to buy because he's exactly the profile of player we need, and you know, he could definitely play next to Casemiro and deputise for him. So if we could do a loan to buy for Tchouaméni, I'd love it. But I think it's too much of a competent deal. CLJ says, Frankie just announced he's getting a little one. He always says he loves it in Barca. He got the captaincy last game as well. There is no way he'll move to Manchester or anywhere now, says CLG. Well, again, I don't think Frankie de Jong would leave Barcelona, but it's never Frankie de Jong who's looking to leave, is it? It's Barcelona who are looking to sell him. Great stuff. When are the next live shows, says Christian? I think we'll probably try and do some more live shows sort of in the autumn, around Christmas time. I think it'd be nice to do some shows around then. Loan to buy is good if the price is already agreed beforehand, says AK. And Mark, what's your opinion on Rasmus? Well, you know what my opinion on is on that. I've always said I think we'll buy him. But then also the goalkeeper situation, says Julian. Do you think the goalkeeper situation will get resolved this week? Well, that's a nice little segue into what Fabrizio has said. So you take all that, what I've just said about Bijlow, and United are in talks with him and he's a cheaper option. And then you get this from Sky. Man United are proceeding quickly in their pursuit of Onana. Inter are expecting the first official proposal in the next few hours, and that's in line with their valuation of 50 million euros plus bonus. So that looks quite positive in relation to what's going on. And then Fabrizio Romano has spoken about Onana and said that Man United and Onana, well, basically says that Onana will come to Manchester United. He wants to come. Expect more talks this week. So I'd say deciphering that information, we're clearly looking at a lot of different options. We've obviously got a cheap option. We've obviously got an expensive option. And don't forget, you've got the David De Gea situation as well, where they want to speak to David De Gea. So my prediction on this, and I said this on Friday morning, the Onana deal's not as advanced as people think it is. I think a lot of people thought we were going to have a here we go on Friday, and I said from what I'd been told from people close to the club, that's not happening. And I think that they are going to hold talks with De Gea, and I think once they've held those talks with De Gea, they'll announce that De Gea's leaving, and then they'll move forward on a goalkeeper. Now, the question's going to be how quickly they can move forward on all those things. I don't think, and also I don't think it would be fair that United have a here we go with Onana before the David De Gea situation is resolved. So I think that we'll probably conclude the De Gea situation and then move forward on the Onana situation. And the question's going to be how quickly we can do that. As I said before, it's incredible to me that we knew his contract was running out on Friday. We knew he was getting married this weekend. And we're basically publicly humiliating him by letting the world know that we want another goalkeeper, but we might keep him if we can't get one. I personally think Ten Hag has made his mind up. I think Ten Hag has said, look, because, Ten Hag has spoken very encouragingly about De Gea, and I don't think that was fake. I don't think that was made up, and therefore I think from Ten Hag's side he's made his mind up and would probably want the situation to be dealt with professionally and quickly, but unfortunately we haven't managed to do that, and I don't know why. But I think the first obstacle for United is to speak to David De Gea and get this resolved quickly. And look, there is interest from Saudi Arabia, and he will earn more money there than he's been earning for the last 3 years on a very, very good contract here. So I think De Gea's just got to, he's got to go. He's got to go. His decision has to be to go, because the only question De Gea needs to say is, am I number one? No, I'm going. That's it. Simple. and he's offers are on the table. Tchouameni's better right now, but risk is he can be the next Pogba in that he did not end well. Feel Gravenberch can significantly improve, says Ron. And Mark, I'm telling you now, says James, they're doing same thing they did with Mount, pretending to go for other targets to keep the price down for main target Onana, says James. Bijlow won't come. He had a wrist fracture and basically lost his first spot at Feyenoord. Would rather just sign Bart Verbruggen by outbidding Brighton. Have they not bought him yet at Tarav? Yeah, he looks quite interesting, he does. There's that guy as well. Remember we were linked to him before? Trapp. We've been linked to him as well. If there's anything I've learned from Ten Hag, don't trust what he says to the media about a player, says King. I tell you what, this is a great point. Just to divert for a moment. 64% of you would go with Tchouameni, and 36% of you would go with Gravenberch. So I don't have a massive problem with that. I'd go with Gravenberch, but I'd be very happy with Tchouameni. I just want to acknowledge King Mo there, because I'm fascinated by. Let's get an impression. It's been a while, says Zeus. What sort of impression do you want? What sort of impression do you want? I don't know what impression that is. I think it's Northern Ireland, but I'm not very good at that. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to move on to something else, and I'm going to go with. I played the game. I played the game. Or I can do Simon, Manchester United. What are we talking about? Erik Ten Hag. But no, I think that's a great point. I like to analyse manager. I was a massive fan of Rangnick. And I don't care. I don't care what anybody says. I loved Rangnick. I think he was just in the wrong job at the wrong time. And I think whoever took that job after Solskjaer was going to get hung out to dry by a toxic dressing room that had more splinters in it than you can imagine. It was a horrible place, and nobody was ever going to respect a guy that was only going to be there for 5 months anyway. It was a mission impossible. It was a suicidal mission for Rangnick. But he was meant to be the director of football. That's what Rangnick should have been, not the coach. He should have been the director of football. And I found his interviews fantastic because he spoke honestly, he spoke like he knew what he was doing, and he spoke like a director of football. And I loved Rangnick's interviews. And I found Solskjaer's terrible. I thought there was no substance. I thought he was out of his depth. Mourinho was box office. Van Gaal was erratic. And David Moyes, I just switched it off. So I like to, obviously Sir Alex Ferguson was amazing. I like to analyse our managers. And I think I've said this a few times about Ten Hag. You can read the book, but a lot of people pretend like they know Ten Hag, and they don't. Because we're still learning. He's a very complex character, and we're still learning. I've been trying to work out why Ten Hag saw Mount as priority, and all I can come up with is that we were playing significantly better prior to Eriksen's injury and never got back to it, says Dorian. Welcome to Members Club King Mo. And Mark, I see a pattern. Ten Hag said same about Ronaldo. I like him, but this is stabbing in the back twice now. Good on the face, but destroy them in the back, says Talal. Well, I was going to just assess this. Hi, Ralph. How's Loren? Says Kieran. And do a poll on how many people are sick of every other super chat about Arsenal from Zane. Are the Arsenal streams really that bad? Says Wayne. Wayne, can we just take a moment for Zane? The Arsenal alternative is shit. The Liverpool alternative is shit. The Chelsea alternative is shit. And the Man City alternative doesn't exist. No, I'm only joking. Look, a lot of other fans of other clubs watch this because we're a great community. You should take it as a compliment. Typical Glazer tactics. Try unsuccessfully to buy good players on the cheap. Can't catch City with a subpar keeper. When will this end, says Andrew. And I'm surprised we're still talking about some more signings when we can't sell players, says Michael Murray. I think that in relation to Erik Ten Hag, even though I analyse characters and watch his press conferences and interviews, I still think he's quite a difficult person to read because he has said one thing and done the other thing. But I'm not 100% sure he's lying. I'm not 100% sure he can't be trusted. I just think he's complex, and I just think he has to be dynamic, and I just think he's got people above him that make it very hard for him to be honest. Because, and what I mean by that is, last summer, at the start of the summer, he spoke so glowingly about Ronaldo. And Ronaldo had just come off a season where he was 18 goals in a shit team and player of the year. And Ten Hag had never met the guy. And thoughts on Solomon to Spurs, says Isle. I don't know much about him, really. So I think when Ten Hag spoke about Ronaldo at the start, I think he genuinely was excited about playing with it, about managing one of the greatest players that's ever played the game who can score goals. And I genuinely think that, he was excited about using him. Now, what happened last summer, I don't know. Like, Ronaldo didn't go on the tour, and he still kept saying he's a massive part of our plans. And then Ronaldo came back, and there was that game where he left at half time, and he was still part of the plans. And then, he stormed off. I mean, God, some of the stuff that went on last season, and he was still part of the plans. And then Ronaldo came out and said that he'd been disrespected by that particular manager. With De Gea, he's spoken glowingly about him all season. What a great goalkeeper he is, basically. And then now he wants to change him. But I think what Ten Hag does, I don't think it's that he's lying. I don't think he can't be trusted. I think he's protecting the club, and I think he's protecting what he's trying to do, based on the plans he has. And I think in relation to De Gea, as I've said before, he knew his budget this summer was ideally going to be about 200 million, and the plan was Harry Kane, Rabiot, Mason Mount, Kim Min-jae. And that was his summer, 200 million quid. Mount 50, Kim Min-jae 45, Rabiot for 3, and Harry Kane for 100. That was his summer. That's what his plan was. And obviously 3 of those targets are not possible. So suddenly he's pivoted and gone, well, if I'm getting a young striker, I want a really experienced goalkeeper. I just think he's had to change his mind. I don't think when he... Look, I think it's very, very clear that he thought David De Gea was going to be his number 1 goalkeeper next season, because that was what he was talking about in May and April. And I think he's changed his mind because United have missed out on transfer targets. What I'm trying to say is that I don't think Ten Hag's lying to you, and I don't think he can't be trusted. I just think you've got to sort of try and put yourself in his position, where he's probably getting a phone call every couple of days from Murta or Arnold saying, you wanted this player, we can't get him. You need to go back to the drawing board. So I think he's... imagine you doing it yourself. You've got a certain amount of money to spend, you give a list in and it comes back saying no, 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 no. And you're like, okay, all right, okay. And then at some point you say, well, all right, instead of that, I'll have that. I think that's what's happening. I think that's what's happening with Ten Hag. I don't think it's the fact that he can't be trusted. I just think he's having to pivot and change a lot. It's going to be very interesting to see what he ends up with. What do you think will happen with Eriksen? I think with Eriksen, I think people might be sleeping on Eriksen a little bit, in the sense that I think people think Eriksen's finished. But if you look at Eriksen before his injury, he was a lot better than he was when he came back with his injury. And I think with Eriksen, he will still be... I mean, look, he could still be a starter. Erik Ten Hag really, really likes him. But I think he came back too soon. And I don't think he could get up to pace. And obviously in the FA Cup final, I don't care what anybody says, and I like Christian Eriksen, but in that FA Cup final, he was dreadful. Would you consider this as an act of betrayal to Ten Hag if De Jong signed for Man City? Heard they're going to go for him, says Michael. Well, it would be, but why should Frankie De Jong be loyal to Erik Ten Hag? Mark, I'm a recruiter and judging people is what I do. There are red flags. Even if he is doing the right things, he's not doing them the right way, says Talal. And how exciting this time next year under Qatari ownership. Kimmich, Vinicius Jr. and Osman all achievable under competent owners, says. Well, I'll believe that day when I see it, but I wouldn't say no to any of those 3 players. I really wouldn't. Do you think Eriksen will leave, says Savage? No. No, I don't. I think people are always trying to replace players when actually you've got to build a bench as well. Like, I don't really mind if Eriksen will stay, and as a bench option, it's a good option. I mean, you become a better team the day your bench is strong. Like, if you've got people like Christian Eriksen on your bench, you're a better team for it. Like, I've said that before and I'll stand by it. It's really important that you do have quality players on your bench as well. And I think that Christian Eriksen is a player that Erik ten Hag massively, massively likes. So, yeah. What's this? Vardiel, Man City, not Man United. Well, centre-backs, an intriguing one, isn't it? Because I don't know what we'll do with a centre-back. But you go back to that story about Ten Hag being desperate to sell Anthony Martial, Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay. Well, if you do sell those three players, you've surely got to replace them. Fred's going to go, Mount. McTominay's going to go, who comes in? Maguire goes, who comes in? I think it's really hard to predict United's transfer window because it can fall apart in days. But where we are at the moment, I would say, obviously Mason Mount, 55 million. Anana, 40, takes us up to 95. Hojlund, 40, takes us up to 135. The Monaco centre-back, probably 35, takes you up to 170. And then another midfielder probably takes you just north of 200. But you've got to sell to do that. You have got to sell to do that. Looking fresh today, Mark, says Alex. I've said it before, my dream scenario would be that we do that summer transfer window I've just said. Qatar get hold of the club in August and just go in big for Harry Kane at the end of the window. I just think Erik ten Hag is a meticulous, responsible and obsessive guy. People like this can't work with people like Murta, Arnold and Glazer, says Mario. And Erik ten Hag has mostly groomed and developed players at Man United and waiting to see how he deals with already established and star players, says Neil. Look, I don't know. We're all our own people, aren't we? And I've done a. Alex says you're looking fresh today. Thanks, Alex. I might have said that twice. We're all our own people, and you can answer this question like I can. I just read that comment and thought, well, that's quite interesting. So when you describe Erik ten Hag and you say it must be difficult for him to work with people like Murta and Arnold, who have been, consistently sporadic, I would describe my traits working as creative, demanding, loyal, obsessive and frustrated when people don't share my passion and drive. So you put me with somebody that's incompetent and unorganized, I'm going to get very frustrated very, very quickly because they're not going to share my passion, drive and obsession. So it's a great point. This is why I absolutely guarantee if Qatar get hold of the football club, there's a lot of people on that recruitment board that will get replaced. Maybe not straight away, but they will get replaced. Unless they have a complete brain transplant, they'll get replaced because the way that we've operated over the last 10 years, you would not allow that to happen if you were a competent owner of a football club. You just wouldn't. Or even an ambitious. I can't say that Qatar is going to be competent, but they are going to be ambitious. And the ambition would be to be the best team in the world. Whereas the Glazer ambition is to make them money. And that's a very important point to clarify. Competence has to be earned, but ambition is something different. Todd Bowley's first year at Chelsea has been chaotic, but his ambition is to make Chelsea the best team in the world. But it's actually been a bit of a disaster. But his ambition and heart is in the right place. The Glazers' ambition is to make money for themselves. They've got no interest in Man United winning things. So competence isn't necessarily as important sometimes as ambition. The incompetent person who's ambitious, like Todd Bowley maybe, I think he'll get it right in the end because his obsession is to win. the Glazers were never going to get it right in the end because they never had an ambition to win. They had an ambition to make money. And that's why they bled us dry. We need owners who share our ambition. And then we can judge the competency. Do you think we'll sign a striker? Leon, where have you been? It will be Rasmus Hojlund. And once we get Hojlund, who do you think we turn our attention to next? Tchouaméni seems to be all over my feed, says Ivan. That's an old super chat, and thank you very much for it, Ivan. I would like to think it will be Tchouaméni, but I've heard absolutely nothing about it, and that just strikes me as a summer transfer story that we all like that never ever happens, if I'm being honest. Anyway, look, thanks everyone for watching. Really enjoy the Sunday night show. It's nice to spend it with you. I have just been on TalkSport for 2 hours doing a show, so I am fading fast. But it's always great to be live with you lot on a Sunday night. And let's see what this week brings. Encouraging about Rasmus Hojlund, without a doubt. The Onana and goalkeeper situation seems to be developing quite good. And God knows with the sale, you know, maybe this will be the week. We've been saying that for about 4 months. Take care, everyone. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. And I'll speak to you all tomorrow. Thank you very much.